Hi guys, today I'm going to be doing top 10 books that made me cry, 10 being the least amount of crying, and 1 being the worst. So, rolling in at number 10 is Blood of Olympus by Rick Riordan. This is the 5th and final book in the Heroes of Olympus series, which is a companion series to the Percy Jackson and the Olympians. If you haven't read Percy Jackson and the Olympians or the Heroes of Olympus, where have you been? It's been 10 years. 10 years since The Lightning Thief came out, and I don't know where you've been. These books basically were my childhood. I was 5 years old when The Lightning Thief came out, and at 7, I started reading, and like the Percy Jackson basically got me into reading. The end, it made me. I'm usually like an anger crier, a sadness crier, or a laughter crier. Sometimes I cry out of joy, but those are the main three. I cried because out of anger because I didn't get to see Percy or Annabeth at all in this book. It made me so frustrated, and I didn't like Jason's point of view or Pippa's, so that just made it worse. I don't like Jason or Pippa. I liked Leo, but we didn't get to see a lot of him, and I hated the ending. Basically, he made half a concluded ending and half a cliffhanger all rolled into one, and I couldn't stand it. I couldn't. It was horrible. It wasn't bad crying like number 1 or number 2 or number 3, but it was like a like single tear or like a couple of tears out of both eyes. It was just that. So it's number 10. Number 9 may surprise you. This is the first book in a series, and I haven't read any of the other series or the companion series to it. I have only read the first one because I like to read with physical books, and I would read on Nook, but I don't have money to buy either ebook or physical book, so I have to deal with these. But it's Vampire Academy by Rochelle Mead. I don't want to be spoiled for Frostbite or anything, so I'm just going to go ahead and say this is spoilers for Vampire Academy, just the first one, if you are here and you don't want to know. But it was when Dimitri said, like, I can't be with you because if, like, we were in a situation and you were Lisa's guardian, I would protect you and not Lisa. And so it made my heart, like, hurt a little. It scratched my heart. And that again, like Blood of Olympus, was just like a couple of tears, just like of sadness rolling down my face. And so that's number 9. Number 10 is not a very well-known book. It's Deadly by Julie Caharbo. This book is set in New York in 1906. It's a children's book. But it's really good. It's paced like it says by New York Times. It's paced like a medical thriller, a rare YA novel. It's about the outbreak of typhoid fever, and it follows Typhoid Mary. This book basically got me into wanting to do something in either criminal investigation or medical investigation. At first, I wanted to be an epidemiologist, which, if you don't know, is basically someone who follows around diseases and tries to find, like, follows around the trail, and that's what I wanted to be. And then it got me like reading I started watching shows like Numbers and NCIS, and I was so interested in that. And then now I want to be a forensic psychologist, which is basically like just expanding more onto the situation and more into criminal investigation. So it's kind of like threading off two different threads off of this topic. But I cried a lot because I'm really interested in outbreaks of like epidemics or pandemics, and it really interests me, and so does criminal. But there's a relationship in this, and this girl is still a student. She's in her last year of like preparatory school, because back then all the girls went to preparatory school or they worked in factories, and she has to get a job this last year of school, and the teachers would rather work at her in like perfume shops or like stuff like that. But she goes to work with an epidemiologist who, at this guy, I'm pretty sure he's like 30 or something. He's more around like 20 to 30 years old, and she's more like 16. And so he writes her letters, and she writes letters back. So she keeps all her letters, and her father is away. Well, he's kind of like lost at sea. He's lost in the war, and they can't find his body. They have never been able to find his body. So this book made me cry with just the relationship in it, because it was such a heart-wrenching relationship. And again, it was a like constant river of tears, a thin river, but it was just constant in this book, when you get to see the relationship further and deepen. And that's number 8. 8, yeah. Number 7 is a lot like number 10. It's like Blood of Olympus. It's Breaking Dawn by Stephenie Meyer. This book made me cry just because it was over. I didn't want it to be over. I didn't cry at all during like the Breaking Dawn, like in the movie they did Breaking Dawn Part 1, Breaking Dawn Part 2, but in the book it's Bella's point of view for the beginning of Breaking Dawn, then it's Jacob's point of view, and that's Part 1, and that's basically until she has the baby. And if you don't know, just you know, everyone knows. But if you don't want to know, leave. It's Jacob's point of view before he has the baby, and then they have the whole fight with the wolves, and it's all good. And then when she wakes up as a vampire, that's when Jacob's POV ends, and it goes back to Bella's, and it's her changing, and it's all the rest of it. And I cried at the end of this book, just like I did with Deadly, because it was over. And I loved the Twilight series. When it was 2008, I started reading Twilight, so it was when this book came out, and I started reading Twilight when I was like 8. So I loved it, and I didn't grow up with it because I wasn't that interested when I started reading Twilight, so I put it down, and then I started reading it more when I was like 11 or 12, and I have 3 copies in Breaking Dawn, like 2 copies of Eclipse, but 4 copies of New Moon, and about 5 copies of Twilight, so I have a lot of copies of these books. I love it so much, and I still love Twilight. I still reread it to this day. I reread the whole series to this day, and I mean, I love it. I don't care if you want to bash on me because I love it, but I don't care. Number 6 is City of Glass by Cassandra Clare, and if you haven't read The Mortal Instruments, City of Bones, City of Ashes, then go leave. Just leave, because I don't want to spoil you. I cried when Jace died, and I was reading this, and I seriously believed that he was dead. So I seriously believed that he died. So I was in math class, and I was reading the book on my phone because I had it on ebook. I just recently bought all the Mortal Instruments and Infernal Devices books on actual book form, but oh my god, I was in math class, and I had finished all my work because I was pretty good at math in 8th grade, and I was like, no, I couldn't handle the, like, scene, because I read City of Bones when, like, around the time when City of Glass came out, so I was, what year did it come out? It came out in 2009. And then I put it down because I wasn't that interested in it. So I was 9 years old when I read City of Bones, and I only read like the first bit of it. And I was already reading Twilight, and I was following up on Rick Riordan's Percy Jackson, and that's basically what I was into. I was into Twilight and Percy Jackson. And so I was interested in the topic, but I didn't really like it. So I got the rest of the books on Nook as they came out, but it wasn't until like Clockwork Prince came out that I really started rereading them again, and I loved them. So I was in 8th grade when I ended up reading City of Glass, because I read the Infernal Devices first, and then I started the Mortal Instruments again. And I'm not a slow reader, but I'm a very distracted reader, so I will put the book down and then pick it back up like 6 months later and still know exactly what happened up to then. So I was in math class, and it was the scene where Jace died, and I was like, well, I started just like river of tears, like a constant river, and I couldn't see the book, so I put it down, and then I picked it back up after I could like see, and I like, it came flowing back to me just like a river of emotion, and I threw the book across the room in the middle of class. And so my teacher was used to this by now. I she was used to it. So, I mean, it was fine. I didn't really get in trouble because the book didn't hit my phone didn't hit anybody, but, like, and then it got better, but I still did cry, and I couldn't believe that I thought Jason was dead, because this wasn't the last book, because I already had City of Fallen Angels, and I knew this wasn't the last book, but I knew that it was going to be the last book, so I knew it was going to be concluded before City of Fallen Angels came out, but still, I stopped reading for a good 2 days, and I got myself together, but it's okay. I still love it. Next, at number 5 is another Cassandra Clare book. It's City of Heavenly Fire. And I cried. If you don't want to be spoiled, leave. If you haven't read all the Infernal Devices and all the Mortal Instruments, then leave. Because I don't want to spoil you again. And you probably have, but still, if you haven't, I don't want to spoil you. I cried when Sebastian turned into Jonathan and, like, he died, because I loved Sebastian so much. I mean, he was my favorite villain out of all the books. I didn't really like Valentine because he lied to Jason Clary and said they were brother and sister, but even though Sebastian was in love with Clary, I still really respected him in a way because it wasn't his fault. It was Valentine's fault. Valentine's fault that he caused this to happen. Like, he caused that to happen with both of them. And so it was just like, it's getting it was like just like a river of tears, and it never stopped. And then Simon lost his memory, and it was streaming. It was bad. It was really bad. And I think I was on the plane when I was reading this to Disney, yeah, and it was horrible. It was really horrible. But that's that. Number 4 is Matched by Ali Condé. I don't have Crossed or Reached or the rest of them because I checked Crossed out from my library, and I hated it. I hated it so much. But I kind of like Matched. I pushed through it enough that I finished it. Obviously because I didn't like the next book. I didn't really like the ending to this book because it's only the first book. But it didn't really grip me until I realized how horrible this world was. Leave if you don't want to be spoiled, but their world, they only have 100 books, 100 poems, 100 everything. They got rid of all this history, and I was angry, and I cried almost hysterically because I was so angry at the book for at the world basically for causing this to happen, and the fact that she would be defiant enough to carry that paper around, but then she burned it, and it upset me. Even though she memorized it, she still burned it. But either way, a good book. I hated Crossed, so I only read like 50 pages in, and I put it down, and I hated it. Number 3 is pretty much, I think, on everybody's list who's read Cassandra Clare. Clockwork Princess. Oh my god, this book took me on such an emotional roller coaster. Like, I couldn't stand how bad it was. I was reading, and then, you know, the part in the middle, and I couldn't deal with the part in the middle because if you know, Jem was my favorite. I wanted her to be with both of them, and yes, that happened, but I wanted her to be with both of them so bad. Like, I wanted her to be with Jem at the same time I wanted her to be with Will. Like, there was never teams with me. I could never pick a team. Like, some people usually choose, a lot of people chose Will, but a lot of people chose Jem too. I was team, like, let's just kill Mortman already. Let's just kill him. And then it got to the epilogue, and Will, and oh god, I was just a sobbing mess. I was a sobbing mess during this book. Once I got to halfway, I was a sobbing mess. I couldn't handle everything.